Dan Perry's an Israeli affairs analyst and the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East. He's joining us from Tel Aviv. Thanks very much indeed for being with us again, Dan. I want to talk to you just briefly about the influence that Donald Trump's delay of about 2 weeks, as he puts it, with regard to this, the kind of effect that it's having on the conflict. Does this mean that this is now turning this into a kind of longer-term war of attrition between Iran and Israel, or is there something else behind this?
It could be misdirection. I mean, if I was Trump, I might consider, planning an attack and denying it to keep my enemies off balance and maintain the element of surprise. But I kind of accept that Trump really is genuinely torn in a Hamlet-like way. There are competing wings of the MAGA movement within the Republican Party. One is classic Republican interventionist, perhaps represented by Ted Cruz. The other, maybe best represented by Tucker Carlson, but also many others, including J.D. Vance, is isolationist and wants no part of foreign conflicts, even when they're justifiable in a way. So Trump enjoys clearly having the world, guessing what he'll do next and having all the attention focused on him. On the ground, I think the results are devastating, and fundamentally, it's a very, very dangerous mistake, because Israel clearly will not end its operation as long as this is in the offing. So even if they've optimized from their point of view, they're going to just continue. And every day that passes brings diminishing returns, perhaps, but incredible risk. Because, only one missile that gets through and causes a true mass casualty event in Israel will create pressure politically in Israel for an escalation. And I don't think that's something anyone wants to see. So I think the wiser thing for Trump to do would be either to accept Iran's overtures and resume negotiations with Iran at this point weakened and perhaps chastened and more flexible. You can always resume the fight later, or if he's disinclined to do that and he wants to seize the moment with Iran being on the back foot because of Israel's successes, then, join the war and attack Fordo with bunker-busting bombs that would enable Israel and the U.S. to say they've destroyed the Iranian nuclear program and declare victory. Wars classically should end at some point with victory of one side or the other. This idea of forever wars is very bad for all sides, and is something Trump himself has condemned, and rightly so.
Benjamin Netanyahu, when these attacks started by Israel, said that they were being done in order to neutralize what was being perceived as an imminent threat from Iran's nuclear program. There have been many voices that have come up, including, of course, from Iran itself, saying that there is no immediate imminent threat from Iran's nuclear program. Nevertheless, in the event that Israel carries out all these attacks and does, to its satisfaction, decapitate, if you like, what it believes is Iran's nuclear program, how much safer are Israelis going to be?
I think most Israelis think they'd be safer without Iran being either a nuclear weapon state or a threshold state. I would like to see a transparent presentation at some point, and the sooner the better, of whatever intelligence Israel had that made this moment particularly opportune, although there are other reasons that one could present, or different narratives, like, for example, Trump's own 60-day deadline for Iran to be flexible in the talks, and he pretty much suggests he was aligned with Israel on day 61. Look, the Iranian disavowals of a nuclear program ring hollow to me, because it's the IAEA has stated clearly that Iran is enriching uranium at a 60% level that has absolutely no non-military use, none whatsoever. They have also detected the weapons of levels of enrichment up to 83%, which again is purely for weaponization. So, I mean, their denials are laughable. Now, what degree they have proceeded, how close they were to a bomb, hours, days, weeks, I do not know. But the Israelis cannot accept an Iranian nuclear bomb. And I think the regime in Iran misreads the situation if they think they can somehow continue buying time and playing games. I think that ship has sailed. I think even another ship has sailed. This idea that Iran can arm and fund and train and guide militias all over the region, undermining the sovereignty of Lebanon and Yemen and the Palestinian Authority and the Iraqi government, I never understood why that was tolerated even for a split second. So look, the world is full of despotic and dictatorial regimes, from Korea to Cuba and many places in between, generally, we leave it to those societies to overthrow those regimes. But when such regimes become a menace to their region, that's when talk of intervention and talk of regime change becomes more prominent. And in my view, it eventually becomes justifiable. I think that's where we are. And the notion that this is purely a question of Iranian sovereignty is not so convincing to me, when everyone knows that when you talk to people who are outside Iran and therefore have a measure of freedom of speech, the vast majority of the Iranian people would like this regime to go so they can enjoy the freedom that we have in many other countries, including, by the way, in Israel.
It's very interesting to get your thoughts on this. Dan Perry, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Dan, good to have you back on the show. So for 9 days,
Closer.
Israelis have been living with the threat of missile strikes, alerts, sirens, shelters, all of it. What's the general feeling around you at this point?
My sense is that there is a strong consensus in Israel, as your correspondent said, that Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons, and that a successful attack on Iran's nuclear infrastructure will enjoy support for some time. Obviously, as in all things, there is the question of cost, and at this point, the cost has been over 20 civilian lives and some destruction on the ground. Whether that is tolerable or not is, for each person to decide. But as time goes on and the disruption of daily life and the damage in all the various ways increases, I think questions will eventually start to arise. Israel's military doctrine always was, short, well-defined, decisive wars on enemy territory. The home front is always vulnerable because the country's so small, and Israel's governments throughout its history have more or less respected that doctrine for very, very smart reasons. Netanyahu seems to have trouble ending wars. The war in Gaza is at this point very unpopular because there is a sense that the aims are not defined. It's not short. The disruption is too great, and it even perhaps serves some illegitimate political purposes. So the Iran war cannot end up in that place. The Israeli public will certainly ask very difficult questions and begin to turn on this project if it drags on indefinitely. And I think Netanyahu knows that. A successful operation in Iran that truly defangs the nuclear program of Iran, and never mind destabilizes and maybe helps compel the removal of the regime, that presents Netanyahu with a chance to save something of his legacy.
I want to jump off the point you were making about the war aims. Does the Israeli public feel that they understand the war aims of the current strikes? Do they know what the end goal is? Is there a clear sense of, what would make Netanyahu stop?
Netanyahu is very much distrusted. Polls suggest that even a majority of his voters believe that he has political calculations as part of his decision-making process in a way that is unprecedented and troubling. So they support the goal of decapitating the nuclear program. I think they generally believe that is the goal. He has not been transparent about whatever intelligence made the timing, urgent. Netanyahu is always on the cusp of being disbelieved. So what I can say is a week into it, we will soon start seeing a questioning of whether Netanyahu knows when to call it a day, take the win, declare victory, and move on. Therefore, it becomes quite critical for Donald Trump to decide one way or the other. And he has a clear choice between attacking Fordo and helping Israel get that win, which Israel cannot do on its own because it lacks bunker-busting bombs, or accept the outstretched hand of Iran, stop the war, compel Israel to stop the war, which he can do without a shadow of a doubt, and resume negotiations with Iran in a situation where the regime is perhaps chastened and more willing to be flexible.
Dan Perry in Tel Aviv, thank you for joining us.